item is reserved for persons wishing to address the executive committee on any EBCE related matters that are not otherwise on the meeting agenda. Public comments on other matters listed on the agenda shall be heard when that matter is called. As with all public comment, members of the public who wish to address the committee are customarily limited to 3 minutes per speaker and must complete an electronic speaker card, or there are cards in the room. So we'll keep with the 3 minutes. And do we have any members of the public that would wish to speak at this time?
There are no hands raised at this time.
Give it a quick minute and see if anyone else.
Do you have a hand raised?
Okay, go ahead.
Marvin Boomer, you recognize for 3 minutes.
Good afternoon. Good morning, people. My name is Dr. Marvin Boomer, and I currently serve as a pathway administrator at Castlemont High School, OUSD, where I support our 2 academic pathways, Sustainable Urban Design Academy and Community Health Equity Academy. Our pathways prepare students to do real community work and allow their ideas and skills to be used real time and contributing to change big and small in themselves, their school, and their communities. Along with projects such as Community Health Fair, addressing issues from the Alameda County Community Health Needs Assessment put on by our CHE Academy, students in our Castlemont SUDA Academy have been doing really cool urban planning and urban design work, some of which includes community spaces at affordable housing units with EBALDC, ideas for vacant lots turned into the likes of Liberation Park with Black Cultural Zone in the city of Oakland, redesign of Oakland Coliseum with African American Sports and Entertainment Group, to designing potential resilience hubs at Lions Creek Crossing with Local Clean Energy Alliance, EBALDC, and other partners. Right now in East Oakland, there's a great deal of momentum behind the community coming together for a sustainable future. Like I mentioned, Black Cultural Zones working on housing and economic empowerment, East Oakland Collective, transportation access and justice, Homies Empowerment, food sovereignty and educational justice, Roots Community Health Center, healthcare access and delivery. Not to mention that many, if not all of these organizations are Black, Brown, BIPOC led. All of us putting energy and focus into the same and overlapping areas, establishing a foundation through collaboration and community. There is and will continue to be a growing need to create energy resilience, and it's important to have locally controlled resources for energy resilience. Even at Castlemont, we have a cool opportunity to continue to build on what we currently have. We have a 1-acre farm, orchard, and garden where we are growing food on campus for the community. We have a few solar panels in the parking lot, but we should have way more. Maybe at our farm or our fab lab near our pool, we could add storage and all kinds of new things. Our schools and communities do not have access to clean energy, and we are paying extremely high prices for energy. Recycling that energy could be beneficial to not only the school, but the community at large. This type of investment and infrastructure should be happening all over the community, specifically in community trusted places, not only municipal buildings, which could include small businesses, community centers such as Youth Uprising next door, the Riot Center in Richmond, immigrant safe spaces, but just places where people are more likely to go for energy resilience. These investments will be helpful and supportive for not just East Oakland, but all East Bay cities involved in East Bay community energy. Please consider these comments in your decision-making. Thank you for your time and have a wonderful, blessed day.
Thank you.
There are no further hands raised for public comment.
Okay, we'll go ahead and close public comment, move on to approval of the minutes from May 3rd, 2023 that were distributed to the members.
I'll move to adopt the minutes as presented in our packet.
Okay, motion made. Do we have a second? Second. Motion seconded. Do we have to do a roll call vote? Okay, so we'll do a roll call vote, please.
Yes, thank you. Albany.
Yes.
Dublin. Oakland. Alameda County.
Yes.
Pleasanton.
Aye.
Minutes are approved.
Okay, moving to item 4, the fiscal year 2023-24 draft budget review informational item. To review the updated information on the proposed draft budget for the upcoming fiscal year for EBCE. We've seen this before, and so we'll see it again. So staff. Okay.
Both slides, please. So I'm going to focus on updates, less than the rehashing of the full document itself. The major changes are every May, PG&E issues its first forecast for what its rates are going to be in 2024. That is obviously relevant here because our fiscal year spans 2023 and 2024. And so look at our expected revenues. It's important to have the most up-to-date information possible or what PG&E's rates are going to be. So we have integrated that. And the result is a very, very modest change from what was presented in May. $2 million acquisition. Based on this, we have elected a staff not to recommend any change to our base value proposition recommendation. So continuing forward, a 5% discount for Bright Choice and a 1/4 cent premium for Renewable 100. That would still carry also a one-time dividend at the end of the year that I'll speak to very briefly. We are proposing to generally allocate this $3 million increase in our net position as an increase of $3 million to our local development budget, funding 2 specific areas. One is an extension of funding to community grants for an additional year. So instead of funding them for 3 years forward, we would add a 4th year of funding, and then also to set aside some funds to provide technical assistance to community-based organizations seek to pursue resilience hub projects. Also added detailed discussion about major risk factors, personnel budget build out, and use of funds under different value propositions areas. Next slide, please. This is number rehashing. You've seen the slide before, and you'll see net increase of $177 million. That's very much in line with what we presented last month. Next slide, please. Cover these major items. This is just sort of everything that's being planned. So the same discount, the same bill credit.
Take a quick pause. I'm just getting a note that the sound quality is not that great, so we might want to position this a little closer to you
Take these items off the table.
as well.
No problem.
Very set.
Just go to the next slide. No major changes here. Similarly, no major changes to our expected renewable energy, our proposed renewable energy procurement, carbon-free energy procurement targets. Continuing to sort of set them at 71 and 81% respectively. Same dynamic here. With the current 5% bill credit and the on-bill credit that would be provided at the end of the year, sort of assuming the results are what are forecast. So delivering an expected savings for non-care residential customers of $43 and for care residential customers of more like $90, $80, $83. Next slide. And in total, providing almost $37 million of customer bill savings to all customers. So a question was asked about, what could we do if we changed our value proposition, or did not either increase our discount or decreased our proposed discount, and particularly in the context of decreasing our proposed discount, that creates incremental revenues. So what we looked at were incremental changes. Generally speaking, we find that a 0.75% change in Bright Choice equates to a 1/4 cent change in Renewable 100. These things move together because we're serving all customers, right? We don't want to disadvantage or advantage one set of customers over another set of customers, particularly when some communities have opted to default and some have not, right? So if you were to say, move just Bright Choice, but not Renewable 100, communities that have defaulted to Renewable 100 could be at, relatively speaking, disadvantaged, and vice versa. If you were to just say lower the cost of RE 100, but not make a change to Bright Choice, then all our customers who are on Bright Choice are in some sense subsidizing our Renewable 100. So we think about these two things generally moving kind of in parallel. So we think about an increment of change. Just for simplicity's sake, instead of making it a 0.75% change for Bright Choice, we just kept it at 1% change for Bright Choice and a 1/4 cent change in Renewable 100, just for the purposes of simplicity for consumers. So a 1 increment change would be moving from a 5% to a 4% discount for Bright Choice and a 1/4 cent to a 1/2 cent premium for Renewable 100. That would generate an expected increment of 11.5 million. Maintaining our current value proposition, which is 3% and 3/4 cent, 3% discount, 3/4 cent premium, would result in a $23 million increase in revenue. So then the questions are, well, what can we do? I think there's really sort of generally two options for this increased revenue. We did not put an option of put more funds into reserves because that's not kind of what we had heard from the board as sort of the strategic options. It was really, what would this look like for carbon-free energy or for local development? So a $11.5 million increase in revenue would equate to our ability to increase our carbon-free content by roughly 2.5% over the course of the fiscal year. And that assumes a roughly 50-50 split between buying renewable energy and carbon-free energy. Could end up being less, more skews towards carbon-free. It could be more skews towards more renewables. And that split is largely based on availability in the market. That we're in a place where there's heavy demands are being made on clean energy. We're not the only CCA that's seeking to aggressively pursue high levels of clean energy, yet we're not building the new supplies as fast as that demand. So that is creating pressure on price. On the local development front, I think practically speaking, we view there as being pretty limited ability to increase our budget beyond the increase that we've already just made. So we did increase from 22 to 25 from May to now. I think at most we feel like we have the capacity, the organizational capacity potentially increase by a couple million more to increase the availability of investment funds and incentives in programs that we're already running. What we do not have at this time is the capacity to go and launch wholly new initiatives, really for some time. I think probably for the next 2 years at least, we would have a very hard time launching a wholly new initiative outside of the work that we're doing. And I'll speak to what that work is. We're doing a lot. We probably put a little bit more money into the things that we're already doing, but we already are investing considerable funds. So I think from our perspective, at most we have the capacity to support a relatively small increase in local development, and there is some ability to increase carbon-free procurement, but it is to the detriment of overall customer savings. Next slide, please. So this is a kind of a core point, just speaks to the waterfall. This remains unchanged. Indeed, our forecasts come to fruition. They're still prioritizing working capital, then funding reserves, and then a 50-50 split between new renewable energy project investment and customer bill credit. Next slide, please. So I think when we think about kind of risk factors, and the question that was asked at the meeting was, what are the risks to achieving this budget scenario? The major risks are market risks. Energy markets prices can move pretty significantly. I think one of the points that's highlighted here is that prices have averaged around $40, and now we're seeing $80 prices. So a 2x increase in electricity price. And similarly, volatility has usually been 10 to 20% up or down, and now we're seeing a 50-60% volatility. So how do we manage that? Generally speaking, we hedge 60 to 80% of our energy costs, and then protect the rest of our exposure, which is not insignificant, by way of retaining significant cash and letting the changes in the PCIA play the rest of the role. Think of it as self-insurance. So insurance is expensive, and the more you seek to insure, it's not linear. Insurance can get incrementally more expensive as you're, think about homeowners insurance. Insuring a very expensive property might actually cost you more per square foot than a less expensive property. And it's somewhat, similar here, that as you hedge more, it can be incrementally more expensive because you're hedging very expensive hours. And so, because the way the PCIA works, it says energy prices are higher. It actually there's an inverse correlation to the PCIA. The PCIA goes down as prices go up. And so you can self-insure by saying, if you have enough cash on hand to pay those high prices today, that is going to come back to you as increased revenue in the following year. So that's how we think about it. So we want a mix of buying insurance and self-insuring to get sort of the optimal protection, but also managing our costs. So I think that's kind of the major sort of market risk factor, and speaks to how we think about managing our market risk. Next slide, please. And then additional risk factors. There's a lot of other risks, right? So one of the risks that we saw and frankly did not fully foresee was uncollectibles. Historically, uncollectibles have been below 1%, and then COVID hit. Not really predictable, so that did have an impact on revenues. Now, what we did see was significant state and federal investment in helping to offset these impacts. So I think something in the order of $10 million. What was our total?
Yeah, we received about 8 million from Cap One.
Yeah.
And then
So it's $11 million of state and federal aid that were passed through to us to offset uncollectibles. But at the very least, in the short run, it does have a cash flow effect. Could we see another global pandemic? Could we see a global financial crisis? Those are all things that can happen. I don't know that we're really uniquely positioned to forecast those events, and so we just sort of try to maintain a strong balance sheet. We are seeing a slow reduction in uncollectibles, as evidenced in our kind of budget this year, where we're reducing expected uncollectibles from 1.5% in 23 and 1% in 24. From a mitigation perspective, some of the things that we are doing is, we have been very much at the forefront of pushing more care and FARA enrollments, which help, make rates more affordable, which in turn helps folks be able to continue to pay their bills, and leveraging all the programs that are available out there to provide assistance to our low-income customers. Opt-out risk. Customers at any time, there's nothing, we don't require customers to pay a major fee to opt out. So there's not a huge barrier to exiting for a customer. I think that's why maintaining a value proposition is important. So why would you leave if your energy is more renewable and cheaper, or you're able to get 100% renewables, products that are superior to what the alternatives are? We continue to see very low levels of opt-outs, and we're not seeing we have over 5 years of operations have not seen any meaningful spikes in opt-outs for any event. But it continues to be a bit of a risk factor, something that we're always watching. And that's why I think we're focused on customer value prop. General financial and economic risks remain. If we were to go into a deeper economic recession, you might see more in collectibles. You also might just see load loss, right? Commercial industrial customers deciding to close up shop. And so you actually see the opposite. Right now, we continue to forecast some amount of load growth because of electrification. That could be offset by a significant economic slowdown. That has a particularly negative effect because we've gone out and bought energy forward, and if we suddenly lose revenues to backstop those expenses, there's a potentially negative effect. Though again, historically we've seen relatively low. These risks, even through COVID, were relatively low, and we do have a diversified customer base. We're not concentrated in one type of customer or even one jurisdiction, right? We serve a large geographic area and serve all different kinds of customers: residential, small commercial, large commercial, industrial, local governments. So I think that diversity serves us well. We have seen risks associated with interest rates in our particular case because they have been limited because we do not have really meaningful outstanding debt. Really, everything that's outstanding are really just letters of credit. So it's more about working capital efficiency as opposed to actually need to draw on debt. But as interest rates rise, it does have an effect of, say, increasing the cost of renewable energy projects that we may seek to contract with, because they are highly reliant on project finance. So that's a factor. Could we see another round of banking crisis? Perhaps. We have sought to diversify our banking relationships to mitigate those risks, and all of our deposits are 100% federally insured. And lastly, wildfire risk. We do not own any infrastructure that would be subject to inverse condemnation. Inverse condemnation is this concept that if your infrastructure or your building or your property is the cause of a wildfire and the damage associated with it, you are financially liable for that damage. It is what has caused PG&E to go into bankruptcy. So while we do not have that direct exposure, it represents sort of a broader market risk, particularly in Northern California. Another potential PG&E bankruptcy would be disruptive to us and disruptive to the energy market. Wildfires also have the risk to disrupt the energy market itself through, a large fire could bring down a transmission line, which could cause cascading outages and create more price volatility. And then certainly wildfire risks affect our customers through things like outages, but it doesn't have a specific, I wouldn't say those outages have a unique specific business risk. It's more a risk to our customers, and we care about our customers and we want to make sure that they're not negatively affected. Next slide, please. So the last thing I did want to talk about, are sort of the two areas of modification in our local development. So can we go to 1, 2, 3, 4? Look at slide. Resilience hubs. 1. Next slide. Next slide. Next slide. Next slide. Next slide. Next slide. One more. Yeah, great. So we have over quite some time now, at most meetings, we have heard public comment around sort of the request to extend our resilience work beyond working with local governments. And to date, we have not sought to do so, and for a number of reasons, very tactical reasons related to when you think about the business model we're pursuing. It is a model where we are actively putting ourselves in the middle of these solar deals. And part of the reason we're doing that is to be able to scale, put a little money and have it go a really long way, instead of taking a lot of money and have it going a little way by giving it project grants. And has allowed us to pursue drive tens of millions of dollars of local investment with fewer than $1 million of capital outlay ourselves, while getting these systems built and providing real community resilience. We do not really believe that we are in a good position to shift that strategy without a major financial commitment that may or may not be merited. The other challenge with bringing non-local government stakeholders is a real estate issue. So when you think about community, whether it's a church or a community-based organization, the question of do they own their building or do they not? Because if the tenant is the beneficiary of the Resilient Hub, they may not be able to go and guarantee they're going to buy the solar from you, the owner of the property. And so this is a major challenge in general in small and medium commercial rooftop solar, that you have your property owners and you have tenants, and the property owner is usually unwilling to sell to enter to buy the solar because they don't pay the PG&E bill. They operate under triple net leases. So that's one scale issue. There's a credit issue as well around even if a building is owned, what is the underlying credit? What if that customer opts out and they stop paying? And then there's what if they sell the building? So there's just a lot of factors that make putting ourselves in the middle of these deals complex and risky. So what we couple that though with the fact that there are significant funds currently available from the state and the federal government for grants for resilience hubs. For instance, the Strategic Growth Council of the state of California just issued a solicitation for $100 million for resilience hub project grants. One of the things though we have observed in talking to community-based organizations is there are barriers to their pursuing these grant funds. If you're going to submit an application for a project grant, you often need to have done some minimum level of site engineering. You need single line electrical drawings. You need to do some analysis of the roof. And you put that weight on the roof. So, and then there's also sort of the barrier to kind of working through the kind of ins and outs of these grant solicitations. It's not, they're not necessarily super user friendly. So what we're proposing to do is launch a pilot program over the next 2 years, where we would allocate $1 million a year to fund technical assistance for community-based organizations. This technical assistance would take the form of, we would contract with a handful of local engineering firms and grant writers that would be available to community-based organizations to support their projects. Community-based organizations would go through an initial qualification process for the site. Got to make sure that the site is located in our service area, make sure that they have site control, which means that they actually have the ability to put solar on there if they were able to receive a grant. And once you go through sort of this initial qualification process, they would then be referred to one of these providers of technical assistance, and they would be eligible for up to $15,000 of in-kind engineering grant writing support per site. And these are, more of these details will be fleshed out if indeed this is approved in the budget. Next slide, please. The second update is the addition of one more round of community grant funding. So in our current budget, or rather in last year's budget, the board approved $4.2 million. This is actually not right. I should have said 22-23. In the 22-23, we approved $4.2 million for 3 years of community grants, $1.4 million a year. That was going to result in 3 rounds of funding. We're seeking to add $1.4 million to this budget allocation in this fiscal year to add a 4th round of funding to take it into January 2026. So that is that. And then I want to just, I think the person, unless there's a specific, one of your colleagues had some very specific questions around the personnel budget. I can speak to that. It's on slide 29, or we can just
See where we go.
See where we go. So I'll leave it to you.
Why don't we see if we have questions, clarifying questions first and public comment, and then we can circle back around.
Okay.
Works for you?
Great.
Okay, so any clarifying questions of the budget? Chair Marquez?
So for the options for whether or not to reduce the cost to customers to Bright Choice and we pull 100, I'm not clear on the option. So one option is reduce it by a percentage or to split it.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say that we are presenting it as an option. I think we're just saying, if you were to reduce the discount,
Right.
this is what the
Right,
funds
how
could
the-
go to do. So if you were to reduce it from 5% to 4%, that would allow us to increase our carbon-free content by 2.5% this fiscal year.
Okay, which is what I would prefer us to do. So are you asking for that direction
Well,
today?
I'm not, I think we're asking for, we're not asking for direction today. I think we're just sort of presenting this information, and if the feedback is to integrate that into the base case, we can do that so that it'd be a base case of 4% discount, and I think we'd have to, because it's a half, the way it worked for the half year, what that results, but it would result in some increase in carbon-free content.
Okay,
Can I ask a follow-up? to that?
sure.
Which would come back at the June, Main
Correct.
board meeting for budget approval and ratification.
Correct.
Correct. So you're asking what to bake into the budget for that presentation?
For the base case. So we can present it as is, which is the base case is 5% and a quarter cent
Yeah.
premium, or we could and present it as an option for discussion, or we could say we're going to change the base case to 4% and 0.5 cent premium for renewable 100, and then our carbon-free content would increase by some increment. And that would be our base case. We would still present a slide saying, hey, go back to 5%, and it would be, you see a step down in your carbon-free content, but you see a higher customer discount.
Can I ask a second follow-up to that?
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to.
No, no.
So quick question on that, if I may, staff. Do you think you'd have more opt-outs in the renewable 100 because the premium would increase or the cost increase from the 25 cents to the 50?
I don't think we'll see more opt-outs.
But it's a possibility.
Well, I mean, it's priced today at a higher premium. It's
Yeah.
priced at a premium of 0.75 cents.
Oh, okay.
So you're reducing the relative premium. We don't see it having a discernible effect on opt-outs one way or the other. I think the one effect it could potentially have is there are some communities who are contemplating defaulting to renewable 100. And so a slightly higher renewable 100 premium could discourage them, though I think from a consumer perspective, the effect, slide here. Yeah.
To be clear, the base case proposal right now, a 5% discount on Bright Choice and a quarter cent. It's both a quarter cent improvement and it's at a quarter cent premium to Bright Choice for renewable 100 is an improvement from today.
So I think a couple things. So it would be a reduction in the relative premium, but it's still an increase in overall cost because rates are going up. But that 0.25% premium is not, it's very small. I think right now, the current average premium, each increment of premium is worth roughly $12. So it's $1 a month. You're making renewable 100 $1 a month more expensive than the base case of quarter cent. So going from quarter cent to 0.5 cent is roughly $1 a month per residential customer.
So we're getting cleaner.
Yes, for Bright Choice, you'd be getting cleaner energy. So.
And then the community grants, those have not been administered, even though we approved that in the budget.
Correct. So I believe the first public meeting is scheduled for this week or next week.
Okay.
And there is the first round. I think the first solicitation is going out shortly, focused on supporting grants to support consumer awareness around induction cooking.
Okay. And then the microgrids and the resilient hubs, I like the approach of providing support to the CBOs. What is the timeline to get that rolled out, to identify who they're going to enter into contract with?
So we have vendors that we work with already. And so I think the first question is understanding their level of bandwidth. My hope would be we could roll out an initial sort of process very quickly to support folks who are seeking to apply to this Strategic Growth Council funding set. That might be on a more limited, we may be only be able to take in a smaller number of relative applicants, just because it'll be a more manual process, a bit more ad hoc. And then my hope would be into the fall, we come up with a more complete process around, all right, here's a form, you fill out the form, we have somebody who reviews the form, they're going to review it within some number of days, and they'll say, yes, this is an eligible site, or no, it's not an eligible site, and here's why. And then it will be passed on to, these vendors for work.
Okay, so the last comment on that I have is, I would highly encourage us to partner with federally qualified health clinics, just because they have long-standing relationships in the community. They take buildings. I just think it's a good match in terms of addressing the needs of disadvantaged communities. So I think that's a good list of CBOs to start with. Thank you.
Okay, we'll go in the room. So member Tiedemann, any questions?
No questions.
I know it's awkward, but any questions? Member Anderson?
None of this time.
Okay. Member Hugh, do you have any questions of staff related to the budget presentation?
First, I want to say sorry, I was on the phone but didn't get in for the roll call. I heard the roll call. You didn't hear me, right? When I was on the phone.
Staff noted. Yeah, staff
Oh,
noted
okay.
the time. Thank you.
Oh, all right, okay. So I like the presentation and so now it's a question, right? For 1% of increase, the numbers calculations. So my question is, you only think about 1%, right? You are not thinking about more than 1% for
No,
that price increase?
We contemplate. I mean, you can throw as many, each increment is worth $11.6 million. So if you were to go from 5%, which is the current base, to 4%,
Okay.
and then you go to 3%, then it's 23 million. Then you go to 2% and it's 35 million. And you go to 1% and it's it's
Noted, yeah. Yeah, I understand. Not only 1%, we just use 1% as a way for, okay, got it. Thanks.
Any other questions?
No, thanks you.
Okay. I also do not have any questions at this time related to budget. So with that, we'll open it up to public comment. Do we have any speakers who would like to speak on this matter?
Yes, we do.
Okay, please, 3 minutes, please.
Great. Jim Lutz, recognized for 3 minutes.
Yeah, Jim Lutz here. I'm a member of this Community Advisory Committee, but I'm speaking for myself right now. I like this budget report, Nick, and I thought your explanations were very good. On the price volatility risks, how much self-generation would reduce those, or does reduce those volatility risks, I assume? And what percent of EBC energy is self-generated right now? How much of that, the power plants that we're contracted for or building, how much is that growing per year? And then about the transmission failure risks, the local generation, resilience hubs, the virtual power plants and all that, that seems to me like it should reduce transmission failure risks, and that we would want to improve that as much as possible. So just general background questions of what percent of our energy production is self-generation, and how much is that growing per year? And that's it.
Great, thank you.
Okay. If we may, staff, do you want to comment maybe on all of those items at the end, or
I'm happy to the end or now.
why don't we go ahead and take those first, if you don't mind? Do you have any comments that you could help us?
Yeah, I mean, I think for self-generation, the major measures of self-generation that we have are how much solar, residential and commercial net metered solar we have, and I believe the number is roughly 200 some megawatts of that does have some effect, though solar on a rooftop has a very similar effect in reducing our exposure to energy market volatility as a large scale solar plant may have. Perhaps the major difference being in a large scale solar project, if there's a transmission outage, those projects may have more susceptibility, that though on the other hand, there's a public safety power shutoff locally that shuts down those local solar systems too. So it has some effect, but limited effect. I think one of the reasons why we're looking to invest in local solar with storage is to try to get more resilience for the consumers, but it has more benefit to us because it can produce energy during the high volatility hours.
Okay, thank you. Can we proceed to the next speaker?
Yes, we have two speakers, Audrey Ichinose and Local Clean Energy Alliance. Audrey Ichinose, you're recognized for 3 minutes.
Thank you very much, Audrey Ichinose, East Bay Clean Power Alliance. Thanks, the presentation is very solid and we're all, benefiting a lot. But I want to raise a question, and that is, how much do your calculations, especially regarding the raising and lowering of the discount, take into account the certain rise in customer bills that will occur from non-bypassable charges? Yeah, these of course have to do with the grid maintenance costs, mitigation, blah, blah, all that fall under the purview of PG&E and not EBCE. But, our organization is sort of inextricably bound with PG&E until, of course, we are able to distance ourselves, maybe hopefully fundamentally, from PG&E. But so the question remains, have you thought about how customer bills will rise, even though EBCE has very little to do with that? Thanks very much.
Thank you.
We'll pause there if I may. It's always those blah, blah, blahs that get you. So do you have a comment, or does staff have a response to that with the PG&E elements? Because I would presume they would pass through, but
Yes, I mean,
Yes, they are.
they pass through. I think part of our rationale for increasing our discount is to help offset rising PG&E customer costs. So you actually, to be able to keep rates relatively stable, our rates have to ever more discounted relative to PG&E because of the rising trend in their rates.
And this would be going the other way if we were to reduce the discount.
Correct.
Yeah.
Just a quick comment on that. We did a parity analysis implementation, and with the 5% discount, it effectively sets the customer back to 2025 rates.
Okay, thank you. And our next speaker, please.
Great. We have two speakers, Local Clean Energy Alliance and ELSA. Local Clean Energy Alliance, you're recognized for 3 minutes.
Hi, this is Jessica Tovar, East Bay Clean Power Alliance, and I wanted to make, 2 points. The first is in regards to the community innovation grants. I kind of feel like there's a contradiction here where there's ongoing support for things like sponsorships for events, Little League, and all these other things that don't really address energy. And I don't want to diminish. It's great that you all are supporting other activities in the community. I think that is important. But I do think that the community innovation grants are just as important, if not more important, in the context of building energy resilience and transforming the communities that EBCC serves. And so I want to just drive home that there should be money added to that pot every year and grants offered every year. And for an entity that makes multi-millions of dollars, like there's no need, or it's unacceptable to hear that there's not more that you can be doing to support local community-based organizations in building energy resilience in EBCE territory. I also want to highlight that the grants still, again, have not been offered since 2019. They were never meant to be a one-off. This is an annual thing as the agency continues to make money from the community. In 2020, when we were experiencing wildfire smoke, power shutoffs, and in the middle of a pandemic, we've been asking for support around resilience hubs and microgrids, and it's now 2023. The other thing I want to also uplift, while technical assistance is very much needed to apply for such, a state and federal grants, I do believe that there's a lot more that EBCE could do, and that I really, really don't want to see more of this kind of, we're gonna outsource, or we're gonna, go over here and get the resources you need when you are pretty much the agency that represents, our local communities. So I just wanted to address that. Thanks.
Okay. I don't know if we need staff to answer a question on that. We've covered that in the presentation, I think. Okay, next speaker, please.
Elsa, you're recognized for 3 minutes.
Hello, this is Elsa Vifas Potter with the local Clean Energy Alliance. I also wanted to speak briefly to the point that Jessica Tovar just made, that technical support is really not sufficient, as it really outsources the responsibility for local energy development to state and federal granting sources. The mandate of this public agency under the local business development plan is to procure local clean energy, and the proposal for technical assistance without incorporating these CBOs or churches or other kind of community locations directly into the virtual power plant and EBCE resilience work really avoids the whole responsibility of the organization to facilitate this resilience and the local clean energy that's associated with it. I also wanted to highlight again what Marvin Boomer said earlier in this meeting, that these resilience hubs need to be located at trusted community locations in vulnerable communities. And in that case could also simultaneously create clean energy jobs throughout the territory of EBCE if that work was put in ahead of time to find these locations that that could house such a microgrid or such a resilience hub. And finally, as Jim Lutz mentioned earlier, local clean energy actually mitigates some of the risks that were mentioned of outages from wildfires, public safety shutoffs, and even could facilitate meeting the resource adequacy demands of East Bay Community Energy. The local business development plan is actually the mandate of EBCE's work. 100 million in windfall surplus is not the mandate. And if this is the reason that the innovation grants cannot be made annual and that only minimal investment in local development is able to be made, then EBCE is really failing at its principal mandate to provide energy for the community. So I really encourage some reassessment of some of these buckets of money and where they're going. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Okay. Are there any other public comment?
There's no further public comment.
Okay, so we'll close public comment and bring it back to the committee. Staff, if I can just ask you real fast, related to the Reliance Hubs, is there a employee constraint issue that EBC also has in it in implementing, or if we were to expand it? And is that why technical assistance is the path you're advising at this time in the budget? Okay.
It's not the constraint. The constraint is a practical constraint that the business of putting solar on a roof is a complex business, and you need to ensure on every single site, you need alignment between who owns the building and who pays the electrical bill. And then there's a question of the credit of the owner. So if you make an investment of $500,000 or $1 million of public funds, or public funds that are backed by public funds, what is your assurance that that building will continue to be owned and operated for the benefit of the public? So, we've shared this example before of a resilience project that we were working on, where it had been a community-based organization. They sold the building, and then the building was moved out from being a community-based organization to something else. But solar doesn't, you don't just take it off the roof. Once it's there, it's a fixed asset. And so yeah, I think that is a major constraint. There's this building ownership question. There's this question, who pays the bill? There's also the need to actually assess every single site. What is the status of the roof? Who's going to pay for the roof enhancements if they need to be made? And then there's also there's an access requirement. There is no, it is very challenging to ensure that a non-government agency provides 100% open access. Community-based organizations say, well, it's for our community. Well, what if they decide not to let somebody in? We do not want to be in a position of being the arbiters of who is or is not a part of a community, especially when it's public funds. And so because this is, the deployment of these projects is a laudable goal outside of public sites, and public sites could be schools. There was a comment about doing something at Castlemont. That would absolutely fit in our strategy down the road of we want to integrate schools. And maybe there are certain categories, hospitals, because of sort of their unique stature and their long sort of durable nature of a hospital, and there are deed restrictions. I mean, if you start, there are details you say, like, we will work with community-based organizations that own their buildings subject to deed restrictions, and they sign certain kind of mandates around open access. But as you can imagine, like, once you start getting there, it becomes much more complicated, and the vetting process for individual sites, as opposed to saying there are hundreds of millions, billions of dollars available. And we absolutely want to be a matchmaker and support folks going and pursuing those, but we are deploying tens of millions now, what will be hundreds of millions of dollars, to build hundreds of resilience hubs around our service area that meet sort of these criteria of accessible to everyone, guaranteed public benefit because they're on publicly owned sites.
Appreciate you clarifying that and bringing that back. Okay.
Just can I follow up?
Yes, please.
Thank you. So I understand all the legalities and why this is complex. I'm not questioning that. But knowing the demand and the fact that we do have this funding available to launch these initiatives, could we make a goal to just identify one CBO per city, by this time next fiscal year? I think we just need to have some metrics around this. Like, what's our intent? I get the technical assistance, the 50,000 grant. I think we need to firm it up with a commitment that's a little bit more specific. So staff could think about that by our next meeting. Post options.
Okay, yeah, I think we can certainly think about that. I think that the challenge we face, and it's not necessarily a CBO challenge, but it's to say, like, the gating factors to be comfortable with whether it's a local government or a CBO to be a recipient of our investment are high. And so just saying we're just going to work with any CBO becomes potentially a very significant staff effort with potentially what may end up being fairly low returns because of all the practical realities around the difficulty of deploying solar and storage economically.
Right, but once that criteria is established, that narrows.
So I think making a target of trying to develop some criteria, like, if you meet these criteria, we could open our current program to community-based organizations, but under these criteria, totally reasonable thing to work on.
That's what I.
Okay.
Can I follow up with that? I'm lending support to that. Maybe we figure out a target or a pilot and we expand it or determine how we can get on a path to obviously do it, right? So we hear you're saying the technical assistance now, or at least I do. And I think the concept of expanding it or getting it market penetration into our territories, I definitely could see a goal of that. I'll let staff figure out how they're going to try to achieve it, because I think there's a lot of challenges that you outlined. So, okay. So any other question or comments before we move to the next member, if I may? Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Ms. Hugh, do you have any comments for the budget item?
This looks good for me. Thank you. Great work.
Okay. Mr. Tiedemann, member Tiedemann?
Sure. First, just I appreciate the moving additional funds to community development and the options on how we can change our value proposition. I think my main comment is, I know you said that it wasn't a staff issue for the CBO issue, but we have heard now a couple of times that we are hitting our limit on what we can do with community development funding with our current staff capacity. So this may not be the place to address it, but I don't think the interest on the board or in the community is going to go away to keep increasing that. So we may want to think about generally increasing our capacity there.
I think, fair enough. I would say like we can add more staff and do some more things, but there's also we've always had the mindset with local development to say we want to think about investing these dollars in sustainable ways. And so, you know, that's hard. We can give money away. The problem is in a year or two, when the economics shift and our margins are tight, we're going to be in a position where we can stop. We can't do that anymore. So if we want to, we want to consistently and durably, invest, we want to do it in a way where, essentially we're underwriting effectively that these are good deals, they're going to pay back. And part of it is a staff issue. Part of it is there's just only so many good deals out there that sort of meet the criteria and are ready, that are shovel ready. And so, but I think that always something we will continue to evaluate of how we can enhance staff capacity to move faster.
Any other comments? I don't think so. Okay, Member Anderson.
I guess the only thing I would say is thank you for thinking about the discounts and the premiums relative to rising PG&E rates. Obviously, we have to think about our customers, but we also have to think about our constituents for communities who have opted into 100% renewable as a default. So thank you for keeping an eye on that.
Okay. And I'll just follow up. I think we talked about if you're going to bake it into the budget or if you're going to add it as an option for the main presentation about the 1% and doing that. And I think it probably should be presented as an option and let the full board decide. That would be my general comment. The other thing that you mentioned was the recession risk. And at least for Pleasanton, we see this on the horizon, right? So if the uncollectibles do stay stubbornly high, that in the budget, and I saw you're already projecting 4% anyway, so you're already kind of higher. I just don't know if we're going to have the tapering down as quickly as you outlined, maybe in outlying years. Yeah. And then I'll lend support to the Reliance hubs, and I think with everything you've mentioned, at least from my perspective, a thoughtful process or way to accomplish that goal, right? And at least that's the message I'm delivering, that staff come up with, how do we continue to do it? What are the metrics, targets to deploy those dollars and keep that investment going? So that would be my comments. Seeing no others. Okay, we'll close this item out. Thank you very much. We're now moving to item number 5, EBCE name proposal, informational item presenting the process and proposed new name for EBCE. Don't flip ahead in your slide deck.
We have the big reveal. Good morning, everyone. I'm Annie Henderson, Vice President of Marketing and Account Services. Thank you for being here. I do also want to make a special thank you to Chair Marquez and CAC member Lutz, who's on the phone, for being members of our brand ad hoc committee and helping us along the way. This is also Director Anderson for coming to an executive committee meeting, which I know you're not on the committee, but I appreciate having the ability to present this to you before it goes to the board. And of course, everyone else. It is an interesting process to go through a potential rename and rebrand as a public agency. Teresa McDermott is our head of brand and has done this for several private companies. And I think she can probably say it better than me, but it is a different process when you're doing it for a public agency. So we've really tried to balance between getting feedback from our board, from our CAC, from other key stakeholders, while also being sensitive to the fact that a brand is something that you don't typically bring to market before it's all buttoned up with a bow on it. So we're trying to balance that process. We're presenting here today for the first time publicly our new proposed name. We'll do this again for our Marketing Regulatory Legislative Committee on June 16th, and then bring to the full board for hopeful approval on the 21st. So with that, I'll turn it over to Teresa to go through our presentation today, and then welcome your feedback after that.
Super. Thank you. Whenever you're ready, Adrian, you can go to the agenda. Thanks. And I would just echo everything that Annie said. Thank you all for being here and for kind of entertaining this process. It is probably something you don't do every day as an elected official, but you know, we feel like it's the right thing to do, and we're really grateful for, you know, you're hearing us out and hopefully supporting this. So I will talk a little bit about kind of why we believe it's the right thing to do and how we got here. You know, both kind of from a strategic standpoint and from some strict data and geographic standpoints. We'll talk about some of the engagement that we've done with our stakeholders and the people that have brought us along and helped us kind of shape this recommendation. And then we'll talk about like kind of the process of coming up with a name itself. So you know, what we went through to do that and what we considered, and then we'll talk about the proposed name. So feel free to move on. Thanks, Adrian. Next one. Perfect. So since the beginning, you know, we've kind of been iterating on, and I'm talking just about sort of the public, the visual and identity of the agency, right? So we've started out with a logo that's just evolved over time, and the way we've talked about ourselves is kind of just tweaked and evolved over time. It's made perfect sense. And we've gotten to the point where we are today in 2022, where we're starting to, you know, do more in different types of marketing. So we're not only talking about, you know, our rates and the fact that we deliver power, but we're also starting to try to bring people in and have them make choices to engage with us on more discretionary items like cooking with induction, right? So this is sort of, you know, a high level view of the trajectory of the way we presented ourselves as a brand and what the brand needed to do for us. And we're at this point now where we need it to do a little bit more. So you can go on to the next slide. I'll just drill into kind of a little bit more detail on this. So this is an image from one of the flyers that was used for the launch of the agency. And you know, if you cast yourselves back to when that was, CCAs were not as well known as they are now in California. And we know, generally speaking, that people don't think about their energy a lot. So those people that, you know, were kind of became aware of EBCE, we had to educate them. We had to, you know, make them feel comfortable that we weren't a scam. It was very straightforward, very kind of education focused presentation externally. So you can go to the next slide. And so the brand identity was built to build that education and that trust, right? You can see there's on the right hand side of here, there's lots of different screen captures of different utilities and CCA websites, and they all look kind of the same. And I think ours happens to look kind of like cleanest and nicest, but it's still in this space. And it's still in this space. And that was, I think, a smart move, because it gave people this sense of comfort that, yes, you're in the right place. If you're in this territory, you're curious what EBCE is, you go to this website and it's like, okay, I feel like I understand these are the people that are going to provide my power. The messaging is very like referential, just kind of what we do, as opposed to sort of benefits to the consumers. But again, very appropriate for an agency just establishing itself. And go on to the next slide. Thanks. So the great news is, thank you very much. We've been successful, right? We've you know, we've grown, we've built a team that's able to, you know, deliver on these commitments that we have, and continue to kind of set more and more ambitious goals and deliver on them. And so, you know, we're saving money for our constituents. We're putting investments back into the community. We're growing our clean power, you know, content all the time, and well on track to meet our 100% green by 2030 goal. So we're doing the things we set out to do as a CCA, and which takes us kind of to this and gives us confidence that we're at this next step. We can go to the next slide, Adrian, where we can continue to talk and work on the supplying clean energy side of the thing, but we can also add a lot of messages and a lot of effort towards creating demand for efficiency and for electrified solutions. So really stepping up and trying to enter this space in our constituents' minds, where we're not just saying, hey, you've got clean power, but we're also saying, and with that clean power, consider moving to induction, consider taking an EV instead of a gas-powered car, consider an e-bike, right? And those are discretionary decisions. You know, we all want our lights on, so nobody's going to argue with getting clean power, right? But you could argue with a company like us telling you, which type of stove you should use. And so we want to present ourselves in a way that's going to make more sense when we're asking people to them, when we're asking people to make discretionary consumer type purposes. And so that's this opportunity we have, obviously, to never leave behind the messaging about clean energy, but to add to that more demand generation and education and sort of bringing people into consumer type motions. So that's the strategic imperative for us thinking it's time to evolve our brand. You can go on to the next slide. You can just skip to the next one. There is also this geographic imperative that's driving us to say, not only is it time to sort of evolve our brand expression, but as a part of that, we believe a name change is needed, right? We could just sort of evolve the way we look and talk and not touch the name, but we feel that with that strategic imperative I just described, plus what we have learned through the research we've done as we've prepared to start serving Stockton, that a name change is really needed and appropriate. We did some research there, a statistically significant sample of people, and we asked them about lots of things, what they cared about in terms of energy, what their awareness was, what their priorities were. But as part of that, we also asked them, like, hey, are you familiar with East Bay Community Energy? What do you think of these names? We kind of gave them some just different made up energy company names to see which appealed, what resonated and what what didn't. Excuse me. And we got some very, very clear signals that folks didn't see them in San Joaquin County, did not see themselves as part of the East Bay. There's a lot of disagreement about where the East Bay ends, but one thing is for sure, it is before Stockton. And so folks told us, hey, I don't live in the East Bay. Why would some company called East Bay Community Energy be talking to me? And what's more, some people went further and said, like, I don't like the East Bay. I don't resonate, they don't share my values. Everything's expensive in the East Bay. No, thank you. So with these signals and knowing, what a large part of our territory Stockton will be when we eventually start serving them, we felt, pretty convinced that, we don't want to go into, trying to bring these people in with this headwind in our face of them feeling, othered or something by our name. So those two things together really told us it's time to, to think about a full kind of evolution of our brand. You can go to the next slide. This is some other data, right? This is like the chart section. This is some other data, just to show that we have thought about, the potential downsides or what we need to be aware of in terms of if we were to change our name, what work we have to do to kind of continue to bring along those people who do know who East Bay Community Energy is. So this is some data over time where we ask customers, constituents, do you know, like, who's providing your energy? So these are people who are getting energy from us, and can see it pretty consistently. About 22% of the people are able in an unaided way to say, yeah, East Bay Community Energy provides my energy. So that's not nothing. That's it's a pretty good number for, a commodity that people don't think about very often. But, conversely, there's another good chunk of people who think it's somebody else. And then the bulk of the people are saying, like, I have no idea, right? So we know we need to bring those people who do know us along. But we also have this opportunity with, kind of the evolution of our brand and the strong engagement and rollout plan that I'll talk about in a little bit, to capture not only these people, but to capture the people that maybe didn't get the message when we first rolled out the service. So we're pretty confident that, we can bring these engaged people who do know who we are along and build from there. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so that's sort of, like I said, the background and why we believe now is the right time to do this evolution. I'm going to talk now about the work we've done to prepare ourselves to make this proposal to you today. This has been a topic that's been kind of brought before the board and discussed internally even before I joined EBCE. So this is something that Annie and Nick and the leadership team and everything have been working towards for a while. We've we're excited to be here now at this time and really starting to kind of, I guess, get things going, hopefully. So there's been, reports to the board. A while back, you guys approved the contract that we put forth to bring on a design partner, a design and identity partner who's helped us with this work. And so just to say that we've been at this for a while and it's well considered. Next slide, please. As Annie mentioned, we've been very lucky to have the guidance of an ad hoc committee of this board and of our CAC. And those folks have been in this process and been very gracious with their time and their feedback and have given us good steers to get to a place where we all feel good. We've been meeting with our MuniPals partners to get them ready to to be able to help us implement this and to hear their concerns and understand and build that into our process. We've, as Annie said, done what we can do to do this process as in a way that balances sort of the need to be transparent, but also the need to kind of keep some of this quiet because of, if you kind of introduce names that you're considering in public, believe it or not, people will sort of buy all the URLs and take all the social handles. And then if we chose to try to use one of those names later down the road, we would find that some person is going to try to ransom them back to us. And it's just not a good outcome. So next slide, please. And Annie touched on this as well. This is, kind of the lead up, that we'll take to getting to the meeting on the 21st and hopefully be able to hear, feedback and guidance that will help us make that recommendation to the board on the 21st as strong as possible.
I will note the CAC meeting is actually June 20th, not the 19th, in observance of Juneteenth. Oh, that was my error.
Great, thank you. Next slide, thanks, Amy. And in addition to Chairman Marquez and Mr. Lutz, excuse me, these are the other folks who have taken part in our ad hoc committees, and we thank them very much. Next slide. So this is a super duper high level view of should these activities be approved, how we would roll them out. And I won't, it's an eye chart, I know, and I won't go into it in depth, just to say that, we wouldn't expect that if the name is approved on the 21st, we're not going to become our new name the next day. That isn't the intention at all. We would take a very intentional approach to sort of educating and enabling all of our partners before we would start using it publicly. So everybody is, well able to kind of pick it up and run with it when we go. We would then sort of go public in what we call a soft launch. So not kind of putting a lot of paid efforts or, being very aggressive about it, but sort of putting the name out there, always with, coupled with East Bay Community Energy is now, ta-da. And then we would, kind of make sure that was going down well and work all the kinks out and get things ready for around the new year, a much more robust, effortful approach to really educate people that this is what's happening. Your local clean energy provider hasn't gone away. We're just that much better. And we would then be measuring what we're doing there to make sure that we're gaining traction. And we would gauge sort of, how long we have to be in this heavy communication state based on the feedback that we're getting from measurement. But we would be back with you with far more detail about rollout plans should this be approved at a later date. You can go on, Adrian. Okay, cut to the chase, Teresa, right? The name. I know. Okay, we'll do this fast. Anyway, you can go to the next slide. As we were, thinking about a name, we looked at our space, and I don't need to tell you that we live in the land of acronyms. And we heard from our research in Stockton, and it's just it's kind of common knowledge. Like we can't stop ourselves from making acronyms, but we don't like them, especially if we don't know what they stand for. If we don't know what the underlying letters stand for, it can be alienating. And so one of the goals that we had for ourselves was to kind of come up with a name that would be more memorable, easier to say, and just a little bit more friendly. So next slide, please. That said, we absolutely, have no intention of walking away from the notion of community energy at all, but certainly in our public expression. And so another criteria we put forth for the name would be that it needs to kind of lock up and go well with community energy. So it would be brand community energy. So kind of, we want to be a little different, but we don't want to be too different. Next slide. Thanks. I won't go through these, but again, just to say we were thoughtful about really building out a set of criteria with which to judge the names that we might ideate, because if you don't have some guardrails, then how do you know everybody's idea is right if there are no ways to judge it. So this was a list of criteria we took to judge our name, but more than anything, it needed to kind of move us forward and be more engaging and consumer friendly, but not lose sight of who we are and who we serve. So that's kind of the main guideline. You can go to the next slide. Thanks. And then just pulling back out to, this is, like brand naming tutorial here real quick. There's lots of different name types. We're all aware of them right now. Like East Bay Community Energy would sit in that lower left box. And so as we did the exploration, I'll talk about in a minute, we looked everywhere. We looked at, the far right of the slide, we looked more to the left of the slide, and you can go to the next slide, where we wound up what felt like right for us for doing those things, for marrying our kind of strategic imperative with, kind of our need to still really be very plain to our constituents about who we are and what we do. We landed in this space where we wanted to focus on names that were evocative. So they don't leave you completely, scratching your head going, who or what is this entity, but they are a little bit kind of more intriguing and engaging. Next slide. And this is the last process slide. Just the naming ideation process, it was involved, and our ad hoc committee members can tell you, we started with a big, huge list of names, as I said, exploring everything from, some very literal things to some really way out there things. And we kind of iterated with leadership, with our ad hocs and everything, to narrow it down, had those like smaller sets of names evaluated for just a very high level evaluation. Were they going to be available to us from a trademark standpoint? So some good names kind of fell out of the process that way, unfortunately, and left us to, the good news is we came away with, still some good options, and that's where we are today, is being ready to expose to you what our recommended name is. Go ahead. So next one. Ta-da! Oh, geez, I forgot. Sorry. Just kidding. Sorry. Just want to assure you that as we are revealing this name publicly, like we've done a lot of work in the background to make sure that if it is approved, that it's there and ready for us to use. So it has been fully legally cleared. Like a placeholder trademark registration has been submitted, so it can be activated once we're ready to use the name. We have done a cultural and linguistic search with native speakers who speak the top languages in our service territory to make sure that there aren't any kind of unfortunate connotations to the name at all, and it's come back very clear. We've purchased social handle or reserved social handles. We've purchased URLs, and we're buttoned up and ready to go. All right, now the yes. Thank you. So the name we are proposing is Ava Community Energy. Go to the next slide. So Ava is a shortened form of Alameda County to the Valley. So it very nicely kind of allows us to embrace and nod to the whole territory we serve. But instead of landing us with an acronym that's kind of hard to memorize and what does it mean, we just have a nice, warm, approachable sounding name, Ava, that comes out of that. So we really think it works hard for us in doing both that, being, kind of quite literal from the geographic, indicating the geographic territory we support, and also being, short and warm and snappy. And I'll be honest, as a brand person, I was kind of blown away to find out that a 3-letter word that like people know how to pronounce and everything was available to us as a trademark in our category. So if you've done this before, if you buy pharmaceuticals and they all have X's and Y's and Z's in them, like that's why, because you can't get any like normal names. And so we're very lucky to have found a name that's easy to say, that has nice connotations, that works for our territory, and that's actually available. So we feel great about that. Go to the next slide. So we've got just a few slides to kind of give you a taste of how it might work if we're actually using it for our business. And just to say, some of these things, they're mocked up, ads or something like that. It's not necessarily the way it will end up looking or feeling, just to give you an idea of how it might play out. So if you can imagine, it sounds like East Bay Community Energy is now AVA, or we'd like to thank AVA Community Energy for being the climate justice sponsor of the Oakland Routes. Or the next speaker is from AVA Community Energy, serving Alameda County to the Central Valley. So just ideas of how once you hear it, it takes a while. We don't change our names every day as agencies or as people, so it takes a while to kind of get used to hearing it, but it sounds nice. So you can go to the next slide. This is what an ad might look like. We are AVA Community Energy. AVA is powering better living with clean, affordable energy. You can go to the next slide. Just another look at that, maybe a slightly more business-like context. We are AVA Community Energy. AVA is powering better business with clean, affordable energy. AVA Community Energy. That is it. Can't wait to hear your feedback. Oh, thank you. We haven't gotten groups yet.
All right, in standard form, we'll just ask if there's any questions of the members. Public, any questions? Member Hugh, any questions? Should have gone this way, sorry.
You're muted.
Oh, you're on mute, yeah.
1 second. So I was blown away by Ava too. It's so beautiful. It's so lovely. My question is, we know we talk about Alameda and the Valley. Do we have a plan to expand further? You know what I mean? If we expand further, we might have to consider that.
It's a great question. And Annie can jump in. So yeah.
We were just having this discussion yesterday as a leadership team, and I think it's something we would like to work on and bring a recommendation to the board for your guidance and approval. I think right now we are actively talking to the unincorporated areas of San Joaquin County, as well as the city of Lathrop. Lathrop is putting this on their agenda for vote next month. There are some other counties like Tuolumne County that have reached out to us, Stanislaus County, but those are definitely a little further out, but we are looking to establish a more defined policy on when and how we wish to expand. But I think when you look at which areas of California are currently served by CCAs and which are looking to join a CCA, the expansion is sort of towards the central and then, through the Central Valley.
So the Central Valley is big, so.
Yeah, that's awesome. And also even in the future, very like 20 years down the road, even we want to expand to, like say, the whole world. We just use AVA, which started from Valley, right? We just say the story. We originated from the Valley, from Alameda County, and we are going to the world.
Exactly. That's a great way to put it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Member Anderson, any questions?
I actually have 2 questions. One, I think it's a very pretty name. It's also a very popular girl's name. So I was just curious about the connotations in terms of thinking of a person. When my daughter's name is Jane, And there's lots of businesses that are named Jane.
Hmm.
So I was just curious about the thought process behind that. And then my second question is, you just talked about cultural and linguistic connotations. Are there any religious connotations to the name?
Do you want to take those or do? Well, I mean, we do know that, you know, if you look at the derivation of the name, it's Latin. And, you know, depending on your Latin scholar, some will say it's related to Eve. You know, so there, you know, there's a link there, you know, but I think a lot of Latin words go back to kind of like biblical, or have biblical implications, and that certainly wouldn't be something we would lean into in terms of how we would use it. As I say, we did find through the linguistic checks that we did that there isn't, it's not even that the word has no kind of negative connotation. It's just like not a word really in most, and if it is a word, it is the name. Do you know what I mean? Many people in different languages use that name as a name. So that's, you know, that's manageable. Obviously, somebody out there is going to know somebody named Ava who they don't like, and they're going to be like, I don't like that woman. You know, we can overcome that. And so I, you know, it's a factor, but I don't think it's something that's going to slow us down. To the point about being a woman's name, we're not shying away from that. I don't think we would look to personify it. I do not envision that we would have a female spokesperson who we want, you know, to be known as Ava that represents us. We're not looking to personify it in any way. We're not looking to, you know, kind of tie it to a figure that reinforces that. So, yeah, you know, much in the same way that you say there's a lot of companies out there called Jane, and you know, it's familiar, it's, you know, friendly, and if those are kind of attributes that they're trying to convey in their business, I think we could look at it the same way. You know, Ava it's warm, it's kind of energetic and earthy, and in as much as you associate it with the woman's name, those associations aren't negative, but again, it wouldn't be something that we're trying to create.
Yeah, also with maybe being human without personifying it, you know, making it accessible, feel like it's part of the community in a way that you know, a made up name or a highly bureaucratic name wouldn't quite feel the same.
Thank you.
Tiedemann, any questions? So I apologize. My only question is the ACE train, and I went to the acronym. So I just want to ask if you thought of that, and especially because it goes to the Valley.
Yeah, absolutely. We did. And one of our ad hoc committee members actually brought that up. And as I said in the beginning, you know, we live in this land of acronyms. We don't want to create acronyms. And so it would be our express intention not to acronymize it. We wouldn't, even though it is Ava Community Energy, we would not, you know, we can't stop other people from doing it. We can, but we would not ever be shortening it to ACE, right? If you need to shorten it, which of course it would be Ava, right? So Ava Community Energy, and we'd always introduce ourselves that way, but if you shorten it, it would just be Ava, not ACE. So yes.
Thought of it, have a plan.
Yeah, yes, yeah.
Okay. Okay, seeing no additional questions by members, is there anyone from the public that would like to speak on this matter?
Great, thank you. Yes, we have 2 hands raised for public comment.
We'll go 3 minutes each, please.
Great. Audrey, we have 3 hands raised. Audrey Ichinose, Elsa, and Local Clean Energy Alliance. Audrey Ichinose, you're recognized for 3 minutes.
Thank you. This has been one of the most enjoyable reports that I've ever had from I've ever heard from EBCE. So thanks very much, Teresa.
Wow.
I wonder if you've all considered such brain power behind this movement, and it's so impressive what you had to go through, how you had to vet this name and still have to keep it, so to speak, undercover. But I wonder if anyone has considered capitalizing the V. You can still have Ava, but you will emphasize the connection between Alameda County and Valley. And And I think it would benefit, doing so would benefit, strengthen the institutional aspect of community energy, as opposed to, relying, I'm making it seem totally personal. This is really a subjective response, but you do want to emphasize power, electrical power, reliability. And so I think by capitalizing V, I think you could achieve, a little bit of strength, add a little bit of strength to that name. So thanks very much. That was a lot of fun. Bye.
Great, thank you. Elsa, recognized for 3 minutes.
Hello, yeah, this is Elsa Vifas Potter with the Local Clean Energy Alliance, and my thoughts are that it's actually quite strange, I think, to have this emphasis on personalization. It is a public agency; it's providing a critical service, and I mean, I think to some extent, I realize there's a lot of time and effort put into this presentation, and appreciate that. But I think that it struck me a bit as almost technocratic, or a tech startup type name like Alexa or Siri, which is strange, I think, to have as a public agency that's providing power and critical services. So I think, kind of echoing a little bit of what Audrey was saying earlier, having something that really kind of conveys that, and isn't attempting to be a person's name, and specifically, a femme person's name, in a similar vein to how large tech companies like Amazon and Google are following that vein, I think would be preferred. So whether that's an acronym, whether that's, just East Bay and Valley Community Energy, which maybe doesn't flow quite as nicely, but at least has kind of that that sense of formality, I think would be more appropriate. Because this seems a bit strange to have this kind of marketing campaign that emphasizes kind of an energetic and earthy nature to a name that it seems to be really following the kind of marketing principles that large companies are following, which again is strange for a public agency. Thank you.
Thank you. Local Clean Energy Alliance, recognized for 3 minutes.
Hi, this is Jessica, East Bay Clean Power Alliance, and I've started kind of communicating this to different members and allies. I've had a few reactions. I will say that, in this conversation today, I kind of was like, yeah, it'd probably be nicer to have something that was more like of a verb, as opposed to kind of this like name sounding type of name. So that was something that just came up for me, but I do have a question. And I think, this is where I think this reaction got a lot of my attention, is if Stockton is on hold and we're not able to integrate other cities just yet, because of the CPUC's, halt and the stuff around resource adequacy, why are we rushing to do this right now? So that I think that's a legitimate question. And I will continue to share this and get more folks to share the reaction towards the name, because I do think it's a big thing to change your name. And then also moving forward, you will be stuck with it. I don't think you will want to, change the name again, right? So I just wanted to share that. Maybe like an action word would be more appropriate for the agency. Thanks.
Thank you.
Is that
no further public comment?
Okay, we'll close public comment and bring it back. Staff, before we go to members' comments, did you want to maybe address that last?
Yeah, I'm happy. So I would say, we actually just recently met with Public Utilities Commission staff, and so we're feeling very good about our current Stockton timeline. It's roughly 8 months. It's an effective 8-month delay from our plan date, or it's 9 month delay April 1 was our planned date. So we're really not talking about very much time. If anything, the timeline we're on right now would not have worked had we sought to start serving Stockton April 1st. We would have had to have made this decision probably in May or April even. I think when it became clear in sort of March, April, that the timeline for Stockton was going to face some level of delay, it became more, internally, we became more comfortable with the timeline that we're working on right now. Consider that you want to be in a position when you first introduce yourself in Stockton to be able to say, this is, our name. Ava Community Energy is coming to Stockton. There's materials you need to build out. You need to have your logo completed. You need to have the website. You need to print those documents. All of these things have to happen, right? And so you want to make sure that you have plenty of time. Oh, you send it to the printer. Oh, we don't like that particular color. Let's change that color a little. These are not things you want to rush. We were rushed. I think the timeline we're on right now is actually the right timeline, a timeline where we say we have a decision, we have the summer and fall to sort of work on all of the critical sort of design elements, website development, such that beginning of 2024, when we're really starting the outreach process to Stockton, we are well situated with the name.
And I'll just add that the second point in our rationale for proposing a new name is still to increase our customer engagement, to speak to customers in a different way as we're trying to influence these individual decisions. And in a way that is not something we've asked of them before, and that doesn't go away, and those goals are still out there. And we really need every tool we can use to speak to people in a way that is persuasive and encourages them to take these decarbonization steps.
Okay. Thank you. So we'll go with member comments, and I'll go backwards because it's so member Tiedemann.
Yeah, two comments that come mostly from feedback I got from staff in Albany of we got calls even when it was EBCE of people who didn't know that EBCE is a public organization, thought it was for profit. So I just want to make sure that in rebranding and launching this, we are not only saying we are now Ava, but Ava and EBC were always public, and we're not a for-profit, even if your energy is, slightly more expensive because you're a renewable 100 base customer because of the choice your city has made. So just being very clear about that and using this as opportunity to hammer home that point and get awareness up about that. The other thing I heard from staff was that, when this happens, our cities might get more calls from people who are saying, what's happening with my energy? Who the heck is Ava? What happened to EBC if they knew who EBC was to begin with? So just that we could hopefully have more resources, internally to deal with that, to reach out to people who are confused, who can be referred to from city staff, just have that contact infrastructure ready for when people are calling in confused or need to be reached out to and talked to about it.
We heard the similar comments from not only staff at Albany, but others. And so we have been building out, whether it's just simply FAQs so that staff, what we heard from staff as well was people don't want to be told, hang up and call this number to get EBCE. So can we do a warm transfer? Can they take information? And our call center staff, who is well-versed in all things about our agency, which the name is the least complicated about what we do, the call center staff can then do outbound calls to members of your cities who have questions or concerns.
Member Anderson?
Absolutely. So this is very much not my area of expertise. So I appreciate all the hard work that has come to this point today, and I appreciate the presentation. The only thing I had heard from public comments and kind of the questions that I raised as well is the sort of tact of, are we going with a person's name? So just the A is capitalized, or are we going with more of an emphasis of Alameda Valley? So therefore it would be the AVA would be capitalized, or the AD, you know, I think that is a decision that needs to be made in terms of how this is going to be rolled out.
Absolutely.
That's
And we're in the process now of beginning, some explorations about, how it would be styled. We don't want to kind of get too far ahead of our skis, obviously, but yes, and there's both sort of like what visual things look like, plus messaging and a strategy to kind of like impart the meaning that we want over time. So yeah, hear you. Thank you.
Okay, Member Hugh, do you have any comments you'd like to add, please?
So I do like the name, and I feel I heard one comment said maybe people don't get a trust at first because this is just a name here. So I think when we propose a brand name out, we want to make sure people understand we still have a continuity to East Bay Energy. So they understand that's the same thing. Because sometimes the customer may not understand the background story here.
Sure.
Okay. Thank you. Member Marquez.
Sure. So I just wanted to let the members of the public know that we worked really hard on the ad hoc committee, and we had to dwindle it down. It was very challenging to come up with the name that we can actually trademark, and just all of the bureaucracy that goes into this process. I do respect all the comments. I like the idea about capitalizing. I want to see visually if it's all caps or just AV, and then hearing the emphasis of ensuring to everyone that this is a public entity. Maybe instead of community energy, we use public energy. So just want to see a variation of that. And then I know this is further out, but at what point will we be looking at redesigning the logo? When will that come into play?
It is
Has it
under,
started?
well, I mean, we didn't, like Teresa said, we didn't want to get too far out over our skis because this has not yet been approved by the board, but we also, we have a consultant under contract. We wanted to efficiently run that contract. So we do have some drafts that we are reviewing internally, and we hope to share those with the ad hoc committee soon.
Okay, and then just want to echo, the V was really, really important to the ad hoc, just to show that inclusiveness to the valley and wanting to be open and receiving that. So I think we were more focused on that than it sounding feminine. So I just wanted to highlight that from our discussion.
Thank you. And I'll just also echo the styling of it so that we do achieve what we want. The public entity agency element, I think I hear it through all of us, and I would echo the same. So, okay.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome, and thank you for all the hard work. We really appreciate it. Yeah.
Thanks.
Must be nice to
Thank you.
see the
Yeah.
end, or the start, depending on how you look at it.
The middle.
Middle.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Thank you.
All right, so with that, we'll close that item and move to item number 6. Members, I'm cognizant of the time. We have about 10 more minutes left, so I apologize for probably being a bit too wordy. And so we'll begin item number 6. CAC term extension plus Stockton membership. Proposal to extend current expiring CAC terms by 6 months and add a new interim member for Stockton. Welcome.
Thank you. Good late morning to you. Alex DeGiorgio, Public Engagement Manager. Thanks for sticking with us in the late morning. Yes, so this is an informational item, so there's no action to be taken here other than just to consider the 2 recommendations before you. As Vice Mayor Baltz just mentioned, that's creating an interim seat for the city of Stockton, and then extending the current term for regional members by an additional 6 months to go through the year. Before I get into it, I did want to point out one error and one omission in my staff report, entirely of my own making. The error is that it says in here that there are 2 member vacancies. There's actually only 1 member vacancy on the committee. The rest of the vacancies are all alternates. And then the omission is down on the fiscal impact. So right now the fiscal impact, this calculates the cost of that additional, the stipend for the additional CAC member should the board ultimately decide to approve that interim seat for Stockton. What I failed to include was the additional stipends that will be paid out for the course of those 6 months to the regional members, assuming they all attend those additional meetings. And that would come out to about just below an additional $8,000. So the budget here would go roughly from $20,400 to about $30,000. When I consulted with our finance team about this, they weren't concerned about that amount of money, given the size and the scope of the budget. So with that, I'll be as brief as I can here. The seat for the city of Stockton, I think that's pretty self-explanatory on why there's an interest in having that there. Included in the staff report as an attachment was a correspondence between Stockton's board member, Councilmember Dan Wright, and myself, and him requesting this of the board. And then the term extension for the current members down towards the end of the staff report, I identify really 3 primary reasons for why staff is asking this body to consider it and ultimately the board to consider it. And that is number 1, coming off the heels of the previous item, that having continuity and consistency with the CAC through the rebranding process will be very helpful. The committee's been quite helpful to date. And so to kind of change membership all of a sudden, we kind of would lose the benefit that we've had of having that those members in those seats. And then other reasons, perhaps a little bit less germane, are aligning the terms between the regional members and the 2 at-large members, because the at-large members were appointed by the Alameda County Mayor's Conference. Their terms are a little bit misaligned. And then third, this will give us some more time to consider any future restructure that may want to be considered as we learn about other jurisdictions that may want to join. What we don't want, or what we hopefully can minimize or avoid, is having to ask any current seated members to have to resign because we need to preserve this regional allocation of members. And that's also why Stockton's seat is proposed to be interim for the moment. I think the expectation would be that Stockton will definitely have permanent representation on the committee, but we wanted to keep it interim for now as proposed, just in case there's any other restructure. Again, we don't want to have to ask someone to have to step down. And for example, if we kept the regional approach, which I think is likely, but we'll see. If we keep the regional approach, that would mean that the San Joaquin County region would gain a seat due to Stockton's size, but the southern region would lose a seat. As it turns out, one of the members, in fact, the only member on the CAC right now who declined to continue for the 6-month term, was from the southern region. So it actually kind of, just by luck, would work out kind of well that we wouldn't have to ask someone to step down. Someone is already voluntarily stepping down. So it might be kind of seamless, but again, as with all things, this would be up for the board to consider. And this is just an informational item at this point. That's my report. So I'd be happy to take questions or comments.
Okay, so we'll go to member questions. Member Keegan, do you have any questions? Member Anderson?
Okay, can you just repeat what I heard?
Yes, please.
Sorry. So the request is to add an interim seat for Stockton.
Yes.
And you did already ask all current members if they want to remain. There's only one that declined.
That's correct.
Okay,
Yeah.
and then extension is through the end of the year?
Yes.
And then at what point will we get an update in terms of how to proceed for next year?
Before then. So, but between now and then, we'll consider, especially as we learn if there is likely to be more communities that will be included in the future. But yeah, I would say in the next couple of months, we probably return.
I think the only other sort of, there is an outstanding question, right? This is the last board sort of did raise some questions, or the last first, not the last, but last board, which you were a member of, has raised some questions around different allocations, right? So now we have a regional allocation. There was an idea, or to say, should every city have one representative. And it's really up to the city to make the board member or the council to make that. So there's, I think to the degree that there's any incremental changes that the board wants to make around representation on the CAC, keep the current methodology for regions. Mayor's council has these at-large positions. Again, none of these selection criteria are enshrined in the JPA, for instance. So it's really up to the board to say you want more city-specific representation. Now, for the most part, that would likely also would not create significant disruption. I think we only have one city that has more at this point has overlapping representation. I think Oakland is the only city that has more than one. So, you know, you want what's that for them? So you'd be the point being is you'd have significant continuity even among the existing members, or you could say you want to keep it. But I think to the degree that the board wants to do anything differently, that's probably that needs to be taken up sooner. And if the board is happy with the current sort of regional allocation, have a little bit of time.
Member Hugh, did you have any questions?
Yes, I was looking at this current term. What's a current term? How many years and can they renew? How many terms they can renew?
They're 2-year terms. And I believe they can have 6 of those.
12 years total?
I think so.
So what's the current process? Is that like they apply or they are recommended by the board members?
Yeah, so the current members were selected through an application process, beginning with an application process, an application period of about a month or so. Once the application period was closed, we reviewed the applicants just for eligibility, and then each region, the board directors from each region got to essentially nominate their choice, and then those choices were ultimately appointed or approved by the board.
Awesome, thank you.
Any other questions?
No from me. Thank you.
Okay. And I have no questions myself. We'll proceed to see if there's any public comment on this item.
We have one hand raised.
Please, for 3 minutes.
Also, you recognized for 3 minutes. Comments should pertain to the current topic. Oh, I see the hand is not raised. There's no public comment.
Okay, we'll close public comment and bring it back for member comments. And Member Keating.
Could I interject with one more correction?
Yeah, sure.
It's not 6 terms, it's 4 terms, so it's 8 years.
Okay, thank you. Member Hugh, did you have?
Yeah, so right now you said it's 8 years. So some members have been doing this for more than 1 term, right?
Yes.
Okay. I think that may not for today's topic, but something might happen in the future. We may not get a lot of qualified applicants. So in that case, we may want to extend the terms. So we don't have to worry about that for now because we still have like 4 more years for any member to term out, but just keep there.
Thank you, Member Marquez. My comment would be, I actually don't agree with changing the terms. I think they shouldn't be too terribly longer, so you provide opportunity for people to participate. So that'd be my one. My second would be, I know that I've had conversations with the executive director about the terms for the electeds because we had the significant turnover when the elections came this year on our board. So I think finding continuity, maybe these are calendar and ours kind of set back to the fiscal JPA timing, et cetera, for our subcommittees, et cetera. So I think we need to build the bench as a entity. And so I think that's important, but I also think the CAC can provide opportunity for new members. So I'll think about the 8 years. I guess I'll say that. Maybe I'll take that as my should do. So I have no further comments. Anyone else? Okay. So we'll close that item. And now we're moving to item number 7, committee member and staff announcements, including requests to place items on future committee agendas. Are there any? Okay, before I adjourn, I just want to mention that I have talked to the executive director and Adrian about possibly canceling the July meeting. Not yet canceled. We'll see how the agenda sets out. But as it is the day after the 4th of July, I just don't know if we'll have a lot on the plate. So just keep that in mind and we'll go from there. Okay, with that, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.